Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to FEI Dallas's Chapter Career Management webinar, The Top 10 Mistakes a Job Seeker Makes. Before we begin, I would like to review a few of the housekeeping notes regarding the continuing professional education credits. Today's webinar is worth 1.5 CPE credits. To be eligible for CPE credit, you must answer at least 5 of the 6 polling questions and have a total viewing time of at least 75 minutes. Participants will receive a CPE notification email when the credits are available, and this typically takes 7 to 10 business days. We are unable to grant CPE credit in cases where technical difficulties preclude eligibility. CPE program sponsorship guidelines prohibit us from issuing credit to those not verified by the technology to have satisfied the minimum requirements as stated. In accordance with the standards of the National Registry of CPE Sponsors, CPE credit will be granted based on a 50-minute hour. And for our first poll today, I apologize for that. We're a little ahead of the game. Okay. All right. For our first poll today, do you wish to earn CPE credit for today's presentation? In just a few seconds. All right. And we will end that polling. Okay. And the results. All right. And let us welcome Bob Walker, our FEI Dallas Chapter Chair of Career Management. Bob?
Thank you, Emily. Welcome, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Again, welcome, everybody, to the continuing virtual presentations. I'd like to begin by recognizing all of the advisory committee members for the Dallas FEI and the FEI Career Management, which are Kelly Harris and Jim Ashworth. And of course, we're going to hear from our other, Britton Pavlik is in Fort Worth. Cliff Edwards, of course, is going to be introducing the speaker, and John Casey. Those folks work tirelessly to be able to try to help you all, and I'd like to thank them for their service. I'd like to thank the FEI for their sponsorship by paying for the small expenses that we have. And without further ado, please allow me to introduce to you Mr. Cliff Edwards, who will introduce our speaker, who happens to be a guy who's been in this business longer than me. So that makes him smarter and older.
I don't know if it's longer than you, Bob, but well, thanks, Bob. I'm Cliff Edwards with Thomas Edwards Group. Thank you all for coming this afternoon. We have a repeat offender today. John McDormand has spoken to FEI. This is, I believe, his 4th time, but it could be more. So John is going to talk about the top 10 common mistakes that he's seen that job searchers make. We've all made a few of these, and I think it's going to ring a bell, but there's a lot of subtle ones that people don't talk about. So John is the managing partner of Transition Consulting. Transition Consulting is an outplacement, search support, and professional development company. He and his firm have been featured in numerous magazines, video, radio. He's been quoted in a number of the big periodicals. He is a true expert on job search. He 30 years ago launched the Career Transition Workshop I went to a few of those sessions, and, very comprehensive, really cool. It's a course on how to find your next position. They have assisted over 50,000 job seekers, and has just helped a lot of people. Prior to starting that, he was a partner at Accenture. He currently is the founder of Titanium Strategies with, some of you may know Bob Williford. They help first-time business buyers. And I've got to think, with all the changes in the last couple of years, that there are people that are sitting on some equity. There are people that are tired of working in the corporate structure. And I think, from what I understand, this is something that's really helped a lot of people in thinking about either buying or starting a business. I think, I've seen John's presentation. It's very good. He's open for questions throughout the process and at the end. Without further ado, John McDormand. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Cliff. Let me get our presentation up. And I've got to be allowed to share my screen. So Emily, did you?
I unshared mine. So you should be able to share yours.
Not yet. There may be something else you need to do.
Okay, now try.
Yes, here we go.
There we go.
All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Good. All right. So as is mentioned, we're going to talk about the top 10 mistakes a job seeker makes. And part of that is asking the simple question, how many of you right now, you can just wave to me, but how many of you right now are looking for a job the very first time in your life? Do we have any like that? Any rookies out there in the audience? And alternatively to that, how many of you now that you've been in a job search or have done one before really consider yourself kind of like a professional job seeker? I see a waving on that. Well, the right answer is it should be no one thinks they're a professional job seeker. This is not what you do for a living. This might be what I do for a living, is help people transition from the loss of work to finding new work. But basically, you still want to be that amateur job seeker. Amateurs are really new to the game, and they will tend to be making rookie mistakes. To a rookie, everything looks important. Everything looks like that's what you need to spend your time doing. Yet they can overlook actually what's most important. So today, we're going to look at some of the most common and critical mistakes a job seeker makes. When you were back working, you used to either give or get performance reviews. You'd have some sort of a checklist to measure your success against a standard. And well, let's see how well you're doing as a job seeker. Kind of check your progress as we go through each one of these mistakes. Give yourself a letter grade. Give yourself an A, B, C, oh gosh, hopefully not a D or an F, and a plus or minus depending upon how you do. We're going to do 10 of these, so you get 10 grades and you can average and see how well you're doing. If you're not doing well, at the end, I've got some other suggestions on how to help you with that. All right, so let's look at the first one of these. And that is, some people fail to have a proper parting from their old company. They have some sense of bitterness, maybe resentment, maybe a sense of betrayal. Maybe it's really not so much what has happened, but maybe a lot more about how it happened. But just stuff does happen. Stuff happens to each of us. Bad things do actually happen to good people all the time. But I want you to ask yourself, was it such a bad thing? What we know is that your outlook shapes your outcome, either positively or negatively. I love this quote from William James. William James was probably recognized years ago as one of America's first psychologists of any fame. And this is what he said. He said, "The greatest discovery of my generation is that human beings, by changing their inner attitudes of their minds, can change the outer aspects of their life." So a few years ago, I read about a research study performed by the University of North Texas up there in Denton. They were studying people that had positive outlooks versus negative outlooks, kind of studying young children that had either a pessimistic viewpoint or an optimistic viewpoint. And they interviewed a number of them, but then came the real test. They selected one child from each group, and they took the pessimistic child and they put them in a room, and they were going to time that session. And inside that room, there was just a host of presents, brightly wrapped, big bows, glitter all over. I mean, it was a mound of presents so high it was taller than the kid itself. And then in another room, they took the very optimistic kid, put him in that room. But in his room, instead of presents ceiling high, there was just this mound of manure, just smelled terribly. And they put him in that room. And they gave it about 15 minutes for each. And then they went in to check what the results looked like. And in the room where the little pessimistic child was, they were all crunched up in a corner of the room. They had their knees drawn up, their arms were around them. They were just looking down, pretty sad. And I said, "Whoa, with all these presents, what are you doing here in the corner?" And the poor child said, I don't know. I wasn't sure those presents were for me, and I was afraid to rip the paper and that I might damage something." And he just really felt bad. But then they went into the optimistic kid's room, and he was flinging that manure everywhere it was possible. I mean, it was on the walls, on him, everywhere. And I asked, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, look, all the manure here, there's got to be a pony in there somewhere." Right? So, bad joke, but good point, is that your outlook, especially if it is a positive outlook, will produce positive results. Negative outlooks tend to produce negative results, sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. All right. So what our advice to you is, it's time to put your behind in the past. Whoops, I mistyped that. I mean, it's time to put your past behind you. It's because your past is behind you. And it's time to put your head into the future, because your future is ahead of you. You are angry, I'll give you that. You may be angry at what happened. You may actually hate what happened. But what happened is in the past. And that's where your feelings need to be. Now you need to take hold of today. Focus all your thoughts, all your feelings, all your energy, all your spirit on what you have already. And if you are ready for today, today you have literally a blank tablet on which you can write your passion or your pain. Each day, I want you to write what you want, and then day by day, see how what can be will be replaced by what has been. See, the key to changing your outlook is to see life from God's point of view. Now, those that know me will know that I don't expect everybody to believe the Bible like I do. What I believe is the Bible helps you see God's point of view. And I turn to the Bible, Bible, because it actually stands for, many of you may not know this, but it actually stands for basic instructions before leaving Earth, Bible. So again, not everybody may turn to that book of wisdom, but you're smart enough to realize that there are some very time-tested truths that are hard to deny. You think things are going bad for you? I want to tell you a story that's right out of the Bible, out of the book of Genesis, out of the book about beginnings, about a teenager whose name was Joseph. And Joseph's brothers just despised him for various reasons. So they tossed him into a pit and later sold him into bondage. But the good book says that the Lord was with Joseph. Joseph rises from the pit and moves into a person's house called Potiphar. Well, unfortunately, there he was falsely accused of sexual harassment and thrown into prison. But again, scripture says the Lord was with Joseph. Finally, Joseph is released from prison into the palace of the Pharaoh to a position of preeminence and prominence. And after 13 years from the pit to the palace, the Lord was with Joseph. But upon his father's death, his brothers, feeling potential retribution, what they found, however, was Joseph's forgiveness and understanding God's point of view. And this is what is said. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done. So others might have intended to harm you by letting you go, by laying you off, by firing you, by dismissing you. Hey, but God intended for good that you're about to do. So give yourself a good grade if you've moved on with a proper parting, knowing that God still has some good things in store just for you. Let's
Right.
look at number 2.
John, let me interrupt you for a second and let's go ahead and launch poll number 2. What helps a job seeker shape a positive outcome? Kind of a little pop quiz on what he was just talking about. Very good. All right, just a few more seconds. And there you go, John. Let's see.
And the answer is,
Is
whoa, 100%.
there you
You
go.
guys are listening. I appreciate that. All right, let's look at number 2. Job seekers succeed when they gain the proper perspective about the search for work. You know, again, how many of you, just wave to me, would say that hunting for a job is the hardest job you've ever done? Well, wrong. Should have used a lifeline. You should have called a friend, because it's not a job. It is not the hardest job because it's not a job. You know why it's not a job? It's because you don't get paid. It's real simple. No one, listen to this, no one owes you a job. No one is going to give you a job. You alone must accept full responsibility for the results. Nothing is going to happen unless you take obstinate ownership. You see, hunting for a job is far more entrepreneurial, which, by the way, like that optimistic kid, means in the manure. So it's far more entrepreneurial until you pull yourself out of it. It is much more like a business, of finding a business to hire you. It's much more like being that entrepreneur or being self-unemployed and just starting out. So some of you may have had this kind of experience if you ever started a business from scratch. So let's imagine for a second, you are now the CEO and president of iwantoworkagain.com. Here are some questions about your new enterprise, but I want you to be mindful that any of these questions could be turned around to be questions you would ask a job seeker. So here are a few of those questions. What line of business are you in? What are you selling? How does it compare to the competition? What is your target market? What are your market channels? How do you plan to price your stuff? How do you plan to promote it? Who wants to buy it? How do you get access to that buyer? What do those buyers value? How do you differentiate your business from other people's business doing the same thing? How long will it take you to break even? How long will it take you to make a profit? How long will it take you to make your first sale? Where should you be spending your resources? What kind of working capital do you need? Any one of these questions, you can change the language, same issue, same point that you would ask a job seeker. You know, what are your market channels? What different ways can you go about looking for a job? Like position postings, networking, cold contacting, headhunters, and those are different channels. How well do you know those channels? How do you plan to price yourself? Well, what is your target salary for yourself? How do you, what are the buyer's values? What is that hiring authority of value in this particular position? Have you thought through that? When are you going to make your first sale? When are you going to have your first interview? How much working capital do you need? Do you have the funds to take care of what is an expected length of a job search? See, this is highly entrepreneurial. It takes work, and it takes really hard work to get a new venture off the ground, especially one where you have little experience. So again, I look at what guidance I can learn from Scripture. And this comes from the Apostle Paul as he writes his first letters to the people of Thessalonica. He says, we also gave you the rule that if you don't work, you don't eat. You need to work at finding a job. And the payoff is you get to eat. All right, so give yourself a good grade if you've gained the proper perspective about a job search, that you have to take ownership of your own ship.
All right, John, let me interrupt you for the next poll, please. Who owes a job seeker a job? These are more like pop quizzes, more than polls right now. There you go. Just a couple of more seconds. All right, we will end that polling and share the results. There you go, John.
Very good. All right, moving on to number 3. Some people fail to set the proper pace for this race to resume their work. You know, in some cases, the pace is really just too fast. Now, interestingly, there are no starting blocks at the beginning of a marathon, and there are none at the beginning of a job search either. It's not how fast you start, but how strong you finish. In other cases, the pace is too slow. Now is not the time to catch up on your honeyed to-do list. Anyone that says, well, since you're not doing anything, they are wrong. You are doing something. So here's the killer. 65% of all job seekers spend less than X hours per week looking for work. So how many hours is X? How many hours is X? Is it less than 40 hours? Less than maybe 30 hours? Less than 20 hours? Less than 10? Well, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's less than 5 hours per week. So you set the proper pace when you set a proper place to run the race to win the work you want. You know, become the lead dog. Because if you're the lead dog, you always have the best view. So run as fast as you can, do the work that needs to be done. And once again, I'll turn to the Apostle Paul. This time, he's writing his first letter to the church in Corinth. And he says this, Do you not know that those who run the race run in a race, all race to win, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may win. Charge out, own that, set the proper pace, and go. So again, give yourself a good grade if you set the proper pace, the pace in your race for work, your race to win. So a question could become, we're going to get another question here, but the question could become, what's a proper pace? Is it 60 hours a week? I used to work that when I was working. Is it 50 hours a week? Maybe closer to 20% overtime? Is it 40 hours a week? Well, this is what we tell people. It should be no less than 36 hours a week. If you're not working at least 36 hours a week, you don't have enough critical mass to make a difference. But on the other hand, about 48 hours or 20% is about as much as I would suggest people. This is an emotional search. This is a physical search. This is a mental search. This is a spiritual search. This is a psychological search. This is an exhausting search. And if you push yourself too hard in the search, you don't keep the right balance you need to conduct a proactive and productive search. So we have one more question here.
All right. Thank you, John. All right. 65% of all job seekers spend less than how many hours per week looking for new work? 10, 5, or 24? Interesting. We're getting almost responses on this question. Okay. Let me end that poll and I will share the results. There you go.
Yeah, we had a few others. All right. It's not John's opinion. This is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Now, some of you could push back on this real easy by quoting yourself, like, oh, no, I'm out there. I'm spending 20, 30 hours a week. That was less than what I said you should be spending, right? So you still have some room to grow as well. And a lot of people would say, oh, no, I'm spending a lot more than 5 hours a week. Yeah, where are you in your job search? Well, I'm in my first, second month of my job search. Yeah, well, what happens when the job search is maybe in the 7th, 8th, and 9th month of the job search? Are you still hitting that high mark? We're going to talk a little bit later about how do I learn how to keep that pace up as we wrap up today. So stay with us. All right, next. Number 4. Be properly pointed at the right target. Some people fail because they're not properly pointed. They're like a loose cannon, just firing at anything that moves. Instead, be like a smart bomb that locks and loads onto the target, that has really a singular focus. Experience says that it's easy to shoot yourself in the foot in absence of any better target. So have a target. And this is what we suggest. We suggest a single focus, and that equals a single campaign. You know, we've just finished kind of a political election year, got a new administration in now, a couple years down the road, 2022, go through another midterm elections. You know, can you imagine some politician coming and calling a press conference, coming to one, and he kind of gets up to the mic, he or she, and says, I'm running for office. Nothing specific. I want to kind of keep my options open, but I'm very experienced. I'm well qualified. Vote for me. Thank you. You know, you wouldn't support somebody like that, but you'd be surprised how many job seekers I talk to and say, well, what kind of job are you after? Sales. Really? Finance. Really? You can't get any more specific than that? That's a pretty general answer. Or sometimes I'll have somebody say, I'm either looking at being a chief information officer for a company or being in systems consulting. I go, dude, those are totally different jobs. Yes, they have technology as an underpinning, but those are two different jobs. Therefore, there's two different campaigns. And so one big mistake is trying to focus on two positions and running two campaigns. Can't be done effectively, can't be done well. You have two campaigns. Well, you got half an ass over here in this campaign and half an ass in that campaign. You got two half-ass efforts. Neither one of them are going to be working well together. You need to have a singular focus. Anyone that doesn't have that singular focus has a split focus or a diluted focus, or they have two ineffective campaigns. I can show you with a simple illustration. Just hang me with me. I want you to start with your dominant hand doing a circle, maybe counterclockwise. Just try to form as much of a perfect circle as you can. And now with your left hand or your non-dominant hand, I want you to do the figure 8. Just go ahead. I don't know, some of you may do that well, but not as effectively as if you just had the one campaign. All right. And some of you just couldn't do that at all. And which is also true when you have multiple campaigns, as opposed to taking time to figure out, this is what I do best, this is what I enjoy the most, and this is what the market values the most. Triangulate those and get after that. That's that singular campaign.
Hey, John.
Yes.
John, we have a question, and it's a great one. John, can you discuss the hourly commitment when a person is currently in a role already? So somebody who's employed?
Yes, that gets back to that minimum. Less than 36 hours in a job search, you just don't have enough critical mass to make a difference. So that's a great question, because you can get caught in, let's say, a 24-hour job search, all right, in a week. You go, I got my job and all I got is 24 hours. And so I work I work on the campaign in the evenings. I dedicate some weekend time to it, but all I got is about 24 hours. I go, nobody's hearing it. It's too soft. It's not making a critical mass. Think of taking a basketball and throwing it at a door to try to get it open. In all likelihood, it just bounces back. Now think about taking a bowling ball and throwing it at the door. More likely it's going to break through. That's because it has critical mass. So our critical mass point is 36 hours. That means you're really working two jobs. Now, if your main job is, no, they work me 60, 70 hours a week, then you really don't have time for an effective campaign. That gets you into real choices. Do I remain here and just die on the job, or do I have to make tough choices about how do I get more active in the full-time job search? We'll talk about another alternative, but good question. 36 is my minimum, or it just doesn't create enough critical mass. All right. Is there any other questions on this before I move on? Okay. So sometimes we ask a client, and this relates to the prior question, why are you looking for a job? Well, I'm miserable where I am. But let's say you're full-time in the job market, well, I'm miserable where I am again. But, why are you looking for a job? Well, standard answers are food, clothing, shelter, survival. That's a job gives me money, money buys me those things. Money can't buy me love, but that's about the only thing it doesn't buy. But really, sometimes some people are just burning money looking for a job at an age and stage of life, which once they find that job might disappear again in 2 to 4 years out. What they should consider is an entrepreneurial option instead. Buying a company may be the best investment of time and money. Which do you really think is safer? Owning a company which has had a track record of producing positive cash flow year after year, or working for the man? All right. So how does that relate back to the 36-hour rule? Well, when you're looking for a job, what did I say? Who's going to give you that job? Nobody. You got to get out there and earn it. So you've got to put in the time. But if you're looking to buy an existing company, no, there are buyer's reps that can help you with that process, that you can offload some of that work. Plus, it's a lot easier to do investigation and research into companies than it is into trying to find specific positions that might be open. All right, so we'll get back to talking about that a little bit more, but that is, hey, are you sure at this age and stage you should be looking for a job you might get and it goes away in 2 to 4 years, or looking for something that might be more long lasting and more enjoyable? All right. I don't think there's a question after this one, so I think we're good to go. Here's the last thing I would tell you is look to God for guidance. Claim this verse as a passage of promise. I'm hearing a fork in the road, God. Which path should I take? Claim this promise. It's from Psalm 16:11. You will make known to me the path of life. Wow, that's a promise. Claim it. And he will make known to you which path you should take. An employment path, an entrepreneurial path. Doing the same thing I've been doing something different. Pray, God, give me wisdom to know the path you would have me on. All right. Number 5, preparing a proper package. When I talk about package, I'm really talking about you advertising you. Some people fail because they have not prepared a proper package, which includes a 2-page resume, a 2-minute verbal resume, and a 2 often viewed LinkedIn resume. We recommend, similar to the way we recommend a singular focus, a one and only resume, one and only one written resume. Why? Because the easiest sell to make is you selling you. The truth about you just the way you are. Not some facet of you or some turning or twisting of you, bending you to fit a specific opening that is there. Just you. This is who I am and this is what I've done. Hey, listen, if they don't want you, let's go find somebody who do.
Hey, John,
Yes.
I have a quick question. It's a little bit, it's on the hours that we talked about, and I
Yeah.
think you'll appreciate it. It's from Matthew. Okay, the little biblical humor there.
Yes, there we go.
A different Matthew. So
I wonder if he's wearing Levi's.
he asks, I understand 36 hours, but give some perspective on how you would divide your hours up. So let's say you're sitting in a job, or maybe not, but if you're sitting in a job and you're working 50 or 60 hours and the suggestion is to work 36 hours looking for a job, I mean, that
ain't going to happen.
That's going to get tough. But what he's asking is, how do you prioritize so that you get the most bang for the buck?
Right. So, simple question, a little challenging in terms of trying to make a simple answer. All right. But what I'm going to tell you is it depends upon if you're a little buck, medium-sized buck, or a big buck person. The higher your compensation, the more you're going to be relying on networking as where you spend your time. And between networking and cold contacting, which, by the way, are the 2 proactive job search channels, you should be spending close to 75% of your time, if you're a big buck person, in those 2 channels. What were those again? Networking and cold contacting. Why do we call them proactive? Because you don't have to wait on anybody to be active in those 2 arenas. What are the reactive channels? The reactive channels are position postings and headhunters. There you're actually reacting. You're reacting to an opportunity that's been posted. You're reacting to a headhunter's call or headhunter's posting, for that matter, or knowing that there is an open job. Well, the open job market is not as large as the hidden job market. I would say that the hidden job market is the size of the open job market plus about 50%. So it's the bigger market to go after. And the problem with reactive job search, those two techniques, is you're not doing anything unless there's something to react to. All right. So people spend inordinately amount of time hiding, literally, behind a screen, banging out on Indeed or LinkedIn, responding to positions postings there, a reactive technique. Yeah, and so is everybody else. So the competition in those arenas are huge. A simple job gets thousands of resumes. The idea that you could be the best but still slip through the cracks is pretty high because of the volume. But with the proactive techniques, you don't have to wait on anybody. The only thing you need in proactive techniques are targets to go after. Targets aren't where there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity that's in the open job market. You go after those with position postings or with headhunters if it's open. But if it's a hidden, you get after those with networking primarily. That's your tool. And you're not going in networking by saying to somebody, hey, if you know, you're a friend of mine, if you know of a position that opens up, let me know. No, that's not networking. You're not after a position in networking, you're after a problem in networking. If you can find a problem that a company is having and you can address that problem, they'll create a position for you. So in the high buck arena, we would say at least 75% is spent in networking and in cold contacting. Where's cold contacting come in? I mean, I'm talking to a bunch of finance people. Making cold contacts is not your fun thing to be doing in life. All right. So what is that all about? That is, if I work with my network to try to get contact with a target company of mine, and I've worked with my network for 2 weeks and I'm getting nowhere, well, stop working that hard to have your network make the introduction. Now you're left with nothing but cold contacting. All right. And so you would default to that. But again, if answering the question is what percentage of my time should I be spending? 75% on the two proactive techniques. If you're a big buck person, let's go to the other end of the spectrum. If you're a little buck person, all right, the less proactive techniques, that begins to start going down in more position postings, because at that level, there are more jobs posted for that size of the pyramid or that part of the pyramid. So think of it literally as that pyramid. At the base of the pyramid, there are much more agencies, position postings, temp to perm type work. At the higher end of the pyramid, there are fewer jobs open up. You know, there's only one chief financial officer job per company. It's one CEO job per company. You know, one COO job per company, but there may be a lot of programmers per company. There may be a lot of other positions, sales positions per company. So it depends upon what level you're at, but I would tell most of you that are on the call, you're either in the middle buck or top buck arena anyhow, rely on networking. Some people could say, but I'm new to the area and I don't have a strong network. Now's the time to start developing it. Some of you may say, I shoulda, coulda, woulda done a network earlier. Yeah, well, again, nothing stopping you from doing it now. That help?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, good. So we were recommending one and only one written resume. And we recommend it be short and simple, limiting your length to 2 pages and for a written resume to 2 minutes for a verbal resume. I've dealt with a lot of folks that have been in the job market, not job market, but they've been in business for years. They've had decades of accomplishments. They want to tell all that story. But I'm going to tell you that your resume doesn't just communicate who you are and what you've done, but it also communicates how well you communicate. All right. So not being able to take an entire career and get to the essence of that. This is the essence of who I am. This is the essence of what I've been able to accomplish, means you're going to demonstrate to somebody, I don't communicate well. I can only communicate in a lot of detail and not to the essential. That's why it's important to get it down to 2 pages. I've had others tell me, hey, I've talked to a bunch of recruiters and other people, they say, got to be 1 page. Well, listen, I'm fresh out of college. I've had 5 years of experience. All I can put in my experience is about 1 page. And you want to compete on the same playing field of that? No, if you've got more experience, enrich where your experiences come from and show where your accomplishments have been, but limit that to 2 pages, but don't limit it to 1. That's not giving you the opportunity to really shine where you have shined before. 2 page, 2 minutes. I hear a 2-minute resume in our materials that you can go online and see, and we can talk about this when we wrap up. We talk about the makeup of a 2-minute resume, but a lot of people say you need a 30-second elevator speech. Seriously, you've been riding elevators, talking to people in 30-second bites. It's a good way to tell people, collect your thoughts and have them down, but it's a rarely used tool, all right? Except in meetings like this, where you're trying to get a lot of people to just spend only 30 seconds to say, this is kind of who I am, what I'm done, and what I'm after. But you need to embellish that for the question a recruiter or a hiring authority might ask you when they say, tell me a little bit about yourself. You give them your 30-second answer to that, it's going to work against you. Again, it's the art of communication that you're demonstrating, not just what you have to say about who you are and what you've done. So here we go. Again, from scripture. The wisest person ever to live has said it this way: when there are many words, transgressions is unavoidable, but he who restrains his lips is wise. So give yourself a good grade here if you properly package with resumes that you believe will sell your socks off and open up doors. All right, we're halfway done on the back half.
Thanks, John. Hey, John,
yes.
we've got 2 or 3 questions now. I want to make sure you're able to get through all your material. Would you rather save some of those for
No, I take it.
Okay, so I've got about 3 right now, so you may want to hit these kind of fast. One from Richard. Hi, Richard. I understand that, or I understood that posted positions for the big dollar positions are probably 2 to 5% of all active jobs, and responding to job boards is frankly a waste of time. Is this the case? Now, one thing I would say is we are seeing high-level people land through LinkedIn. A lot of times that's coming from company recruiters or company contacts or from executive search folks. But, you know, compared to 15, 20 years ago, I personally am seeing more people land through LinkedIn listings and maybe a few other sites than used to be the case, but I agree it's still pretty low. What's your perspective, John?
I'm where you are on that. Again, if I'm spending 75% of my time in proactive techniques, it doesn't leave a lot for recruiters and for position postings. Position posting would be like LinkedIn jobs. So although I do believe we're seeing more positions posted, I mean, if you go back probably no more than 5 years ago, I mean, Indeed wasn't there. If you're as old as I am, you begin to remember things like Monster and Career Builder, and you know, it's been growing. The use of it, the popularity. LinkedIn has really become an excellent site to go to. But again, is how much time do I really want to spend doing that? Sometimes we'll advise our clients. Just did this yesterday, where a position was found by one of our clients in JP Morgan Chase IT center based in Plano. They had a position open. And when they brought that to me, I said, don't go after it with LinkedIn. I have contacts there. You know, let's leverage So we really changed the technique from responding to position posting to a proactive technique of using a network to get into the same position. So
See,
I see
I
people
love
do
that. You get that warm introduction. Uh,
Yeah.
Another quick question on the resume. You talked a little bit about resume length. Um, Somebody asked, should I put my picture on there? Now, I have some real strong thoughts about that, but how do you feel about that, John?
In terms of the 2-page written, no, because now what is happening is everybody's going to go look at your name, Google your name for LinkedIn and for Facebook.
That's it.
So they're going to see how absolutely gorgeous you are, like myself. And when they get to the LinkedIn side of it. So it's taking up billboard space. It's taking up space that you need to be telling the story as opposed to showing your face. So there's a place for your face, but it's not on your 2-page resume. It's on your LinkedIn resume.
Now, this is from Matthew. So are you against tailoring a resume to match a specific job using some of the key concepts of the job description? One resume may not have those keywords, and there's a chance you could be excluded if they don't find the right words.
All right.
I think
The answer is yes, and I am not in favor of constantly working on a resume, because what people really are doing is 80 or 90% of the resume stays the same anyhow. They throw in a word here or do that, and what that is really, you mean those words weren't in your resume? That means you're going after a job that wasn't about you, but you're going to make it about you by putting some of those words there. And that's that bending and twisting. What I prefer is that you go, this is who I am. This is what I've accomplished. If you have a need for this, then you'll look at me. Now, let me, I know I'm going to get knee jerks on that because we work through this with a lot of people. But here's what is likely to happen when you say, this is me and this is what I've done, instead of going, if I twist and turn and give him the plastic me, maybe I could get that job. No, you're not going to get that job, because a person that is perfectly fit for that job, that doesn't have to twist and turn, will actually get that job over you. But what did you just lose then? You lose the opportunity for that recruiter inside or outside the company, that hiring authority inside the outside the company, go, Richard or Matthew's not right for this job, but oh my gosh, he'd be perfect for another job we have, because it's not like we have a job once in a blue moon. We're a business, we're constantly looking for talent. And he's a perfect, let me ship this over to Cheryl, because Cheryl's in charge of that. She'll love this guy. She's looking for this guy, and we didn't even know this kind of guy existed. But you were true to yourself and you said, look, this is who I am. This is what I've done. If you're looking for me, I'm looking for you. And that's a match made in heaven. As opposed to, well, you asked if I had healthcare experience. The job was for healthcare, and I put down, yes, I got healthcare experience. I put words in there like I've had COVID-19, things like that. And yes, I was born in the hospital. So you're going to be stretching yourself. If you're not stretching yourself to try to pretend you fit this other job, then those words would have already been in your resume, because that's who you are. So yeah, that runs counter thinking sometimes. It's not quite intuitive, but that's exactly why we recommend no. Figure out who you are, figure out what you've done best, enjoy the most, package yourself to represent you, the best of you, and then go find somebody that really wants you, as opposed to twisting and turning to be what somebody else wants you to be. Very controversial. Guess what? It works. Been working for 30 years. Every one of our clients. All right, what else we got? Any other questions before I move on?
Yeah, one more quick one from Christy. I'm a little lost on the cold call proactive approach. Is there an example of how this would work?
Yeah. So we only do cold contacting, and it's not cold calling, it's cold contacting, because there are multiple ways of making contact. Okay. I can contact through email. I can contact through LinkedIn. and I can pick up the phone and call. All right. So, but it's cold contacting to open up the possibilities of any of those. And so how does that work? It works, and it's only triggered when your network fails to provide a link to get you to someone who knows somebody in the target company or knows somebody who would know somebody in the target company. When that hasn't worked for a couple of weeks, I got to make a cold contact. How do I do that? Step one, I research the living daylights out of that company. I want to know that company better than some people in that company know that company. And partly that's going to get you the information of who do you need to connect with in that company. And then with that, armed with that information, I'm going to write what we refer to as a UUU letter, not a I, me, my letter that says, hi, I want you to learn all about me. I'm looking for a job. I'm wonderful. I don't have my picture here, but I am gorgeous. You know, I don't want to have all of that stuff. That's a wrong perspective. What I want to do is say, after I've researched, your company is in an expansion mode. You're moving into international as opposed to just domestic sales. You need people that really understand the challenges of working in third world countries. I am that person. All right. So it's all about you, all about you, all about you. I am that person you'll want to visit with me. I plan to call next week. All right. So there are examples in our materials that get into more depth about that. So I'm going to end it at that, and we'll talk about those materials when we wrap up. Okay. Now I'm going to push on. And pushing on is some people fail to network from their network, which is you marketing you, because they are clueless about how to promote themselves. First off, they're mesmerized with social networking phenomena. Social media, such as LinkedIn and Facebook, offer some really great tools for connecting. But the sole purpose of connecting is to get results rather than build relationships. And if that's what you're all about, then you've blown it. True networking starts with the primary principle that it's not about you. It's not about you. It's about you helping others achieve their goals, period. Do that enough and you will achieve your goals. I love Zig Ziglar. Zig said it this way. He said, you can get anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. It's a simple point. We call it the rule of reciprocity, the rule of sowing and reaping. Paul writes to the Galatians, he says, do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows is what you reap. You may be sitting there going, you know, nobody's really helping me in my job search. How many people are you helping in the job search? Nobody's ever given me a referral to a company. Well, how many referrals have you given out? You know, nobody. You've got to sow kindness to reap kindness. You've got to sow help to reap help. And when you are networking and you're with somebody for informational purposes, you're trying to find out where I can help you solve a problem. And that's the purpose really behind networking, is finding not a position that's open, but a problem unsolved. Because if I can find that problem unsolved, I can offer suggestions. Maybe that suggestion is you ought to talk to somebody else. I don't have any experience doing that, but I know so-and-so does. All right. You're giving them a path to a solution. But again, you might go, hey, have you ever considered this? You haven't? Well, let me tell you about my experience with that. Oh, wow. You know, we earlier talked about Joseph. Joseph became preeminent in Egypt because he had figured out there was going to be 7 years of great crop growth and then 7 years of famine. And once the Pharaoh goes, man, you know your stuff. He said, who we're going to put in charge of all this? Well, the guy knew his stuff, right? So he immediately became the number 2 in succession. So that's part of finding the problem and helping the person with the solution. That's true networking. That's building relationships. Does it pay off instantaneously? No, but building a network of those kind of relationships does pay off when you really need it. All right, next one. Number 7. When you deliver your proper pitch, which is now you selling you. So we've talked about you advertising you, promoting you. Now we're talking about you selling you. All right. And some people fail once they get to the interview by trying to tell the hiring authority everything about themselves. But here's what we would say is selling ain't telling. Selling ain't telling. Now, I personally, in my own faith walk, believe that Jesus Christ is the master communicator. And prior to his miraculous feeding of the 5,000, listen to what he asked one of his disciples. And it's right here. It's from the Gospel of John. And it says, Jesus, therefore, lifting up his eyes and seeing this great multitude was coming to him, said to Philip, Philip being one of his disciples, where are we to buy bread that these may eat? Now, I'll just stop there for a second. I want you to understand on the hills around Galilee, there weren't any corner bakeries. All right, it's just a bunch of fields. All right, and there's thousands of people out there. And it's like they're hungry, they're getting restless. What are we going to do to feed them? Interesting, he says where to buy, not where to create, but just where to buy bread. But here's the key verse. And this, he, Jesus, was saying to him, Philip, for he himself knew what he was intending to do. You mean to say, you may intend to want to say something in an interview, but instead you ask a question. You know, it is better to test your ideas or actions with an open-ended question than to tell someone what's on your mind and find that it's not well received. Now, this is a true story with one of my clients. He knew this principle. He was in an interview. The guy was talking about a problem. He had discovered the problem. And he was about to tell him that we had the similar experience in the company I was last with. And we engaged this particular consulting firm to come in, and they just, working with them, we saw the problems. This is what the results were. It really turned us around. He was about to tell that, but instead, he asked a smart question. Well, what experience have you had engaging consulting firms to help with solve problems with your company? And he got about 10 minutes of just blasting how they couldn't stand consultants. They had hoarded them. You ask them what time it is, and they want to build a watch. I mean, all the jokes about consult. I mean, he hated it. And he said to me after a debrief of the interview, thank God I asked a question, because I intended to tell what experience I had working solutions with consulting firms, when in reality, that would have been a terrible mistake. So give yourself a good grade if you deliver the proper pitch when interviewing. Listen carefully by balancing your asking with your answering. If this is an information interview, then you should do 40% of the asking to allow them to do 60% of the answering. If this is an occupational interview where you're looking for the job, it ought to be flipped. But it never should be they do 90% of the questioning, and it never should be you doing 90% of the answering. That's out of balance. So keep it in balance. All right. Number 8, negotiate a proper price. Job seekers succeed when they have determined 3 values: their true market value, their minimum threshold value, and their maximum targeted value. You know, some people make the mistake of thinking that they should discount their value to increase their chances of finding a job. Don't do that. Don't do that. You see, you are a creation, not a commodity. You discount commodities to move them off the shelf, but you're a creation of God and still have great value no matter what has happened to you. Now, I wish we weren't on Zoom. I wish we were face to face, because when I used to do this and I had physical crowd right out there, I'd actually take a $20 bill, a real live $20 bill. And I start out and I go, how many of you would want this $20 bill? And generally pride gets in the way, and a lot of people just didn't raise their hand. But then I go, "Okay, give me a break. You're looking for a job. The 20 would help. You know, you can take your wife out to Arby's, you know, something that, you know, really." So I'd ask again, "How many want that 20?" Now hands start going up. Okay. But I say, "Well, really? You still want this $20 bill? Well, hang on." And I would take it and I would fold it a couple of times and I'd pound it into my fist and I'd grind it in my hands. And then I toss it aside and I go over and I grind my heel in it. And then I kick it over to the side a little bit more and go away. We don't need you around here. But then I go and I pick it up and I bring it back and I unfold it and it'd be all wrinkled and torn and ugly. And I say, "Now how many want it?" And actually the same number of people wanted the first time wanted it now. You see, it really didn't change its value. It was the same value, even though it had been kicked onto the curb and tossed out and told it wasn't needed. Hey, it still had the same value. And so do you. The key here is you don't become worthless just because you become workless. You still have great value. So don't be discounting yourself. You've earned this kind of money that demonstrates this is my value into the marketplace. Therefore, you can claim that's my value. And I would not be in the major discounting business because let's face it, when somebody realizes that you've been making X and now you've discounted yourself by 20% to make Y, you know, don't you think they would be a little suspect that once an X level job comes back, you'll blow their popsicle stand? It's actually a red flag for a hiring authority when you've done the stupid thing of discounting too deep. All right, so likewise, I would say you need to balance need and greed. While you don't want to price yourself too low and look too needy, likewise, you don't want to price yourself too high and look too greedy. You know, here's what, again, Solomon, not in the early stage of his life, but in the latter stage of his life, where all the wisdom had accumulated, he said, "He who loves money will not be satisfied with money. Even when it's satisfied, he won't be satisfied with more money and more money than that." All right. It's just not what your pricing ought to look like. So balance greed and need and greed together. And give yourself a good grade if you're prepared to negotiate a proper price, not too low, not too high, but just right for you and them. That's called a win-win solution.
All right, John, let's interrupt with our pop quiz number 5. All right. When you are workless, you are worthless. Let's see how many have been listening. Answers coming in quickly. All right. We'll end that and share. There you go, John.
Okay. So one person perhaps said, yes, you may feel that way, but that's not what you truly are. All right. So here we are. We got on to number 9. Number 9 says, job seekers succeed when they sustain the proper perseverance, when they stay the course, overcoming resistance with persistence. You are in a time of testing in your transition, a time of testing. That testing will prove out a couple of things just for you, unique to you. And here are the couple of things. The first off, it will give you proof of your character. What do I mean by character? Your character is your belief in who you are and what you can do. And this is what Paul writes to the church in Rome. He said, and not only this, but we also exalt in our tribulations. Wow, that means we're joyful in times of trouble. Yeah, that's what he's encouraging us to do. Knowing that tribulations or testing brings about perseverance, and perseverance Here it is, proven character. And what does proven character give you? It gives you hope, and hope that doesn't disappoint. Right? So first off, it proves your character, but secondly, it proves your faith. Your faith, your belief in who God is and what he can do. Consider it all joy is what the stepbrother of Jesus says. He says, consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials. Hey, that sounds like how we began the last verse. Knowing that the testing of your faith produces what? Endurance. Previously, that was the word perseverance, endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. So when you persevere, it proves your character and it proves your faith. But you may be asking, what do I mean by faith? Well, faith is simply putting into action what you say you believe. That's why I have up there faith equals beliefs plus action. You know, in the summer of 1859, Monsieur Charles Blowden, known as Blowden the Great, became the first person to cross Niagara Falls on a tightrope, something he would do hundreds of times, entertaining citizens on both sides of Niagara Falls, both the Canadian and US sides. You know, if you look very carefully, there he is. And he was quite a showman. Once he walked across blindfolded. Once he had flapjacks and flipping pancakes with a pan and a skillet. Once he even rode a bicycle across along the wire. And once, after he made it across, he asked the crowd, how many of you believe? How many of you believe that I could take this wheelbarrow and cross over this tightrope? And everybody cheered, we believe, we believe. And then he asked, how many of you believe that I could put a man in that wheelbarrow and take him across the falls? Again, everybody, oh, we believe, we believe, we believe. And finally he asked, then he will be the first to get into the wheelbarrow. Wow. That's putting action behind your beliefs. That's true faith. So give yourself a good grade if you sustain the proper perseverance. If you put into action what you believe about yourself and about God and what the two of you can do together. So here we are at number 10. And number 10 says, job seekers succeed when they remain in proper prayer. When you pray to God, you are reconfirming the strength of your faith. You are acknowledging also the extent of your limitations. I will tell you that I know that some of you on the Zoom call today go, my job search doesn't have a prayer. Oh, but it does. You see, before I got on with the group today, I prayed for every one of you, that God will guide you, that God will encourage you, that God will show you soon the end he has in mind. So just to wrap up, God knows your needs and cares for you, but understand this simple truth. God responds more to your faith than he does your needs. And then finally, God not only cares, but he is able. He is able to do the most amazing things. Expect everyday miracles. So finally, once more from the Apostle Paul, now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly beyond all we ask or think, according to the power that works in us. So give yourself a good grade if you walk with him and talk with him each day on your journey of finding a new living and finding a new life. So we made it. This has some information for you. Information number one, if you want to reach out to me to clarify some other questions, to follow up on something we've talked about, to offer something else up, that's my email address, jmcd@transitionconsulting.com. I mentioned that there are resources available. If you're dedicated to the job search and you're looking for new employment and you really want to have some information along the way. The career transition workshop that Cliff talked about earlier is now online. You'll recognize the voice because it's all recorded information synced up with the slides. So go to careertransitionworkshop.org and you'll have the online version. It's about 10 hours of coaching along each of the things that we're talking about today, but going into much more depth. All right. And then there are those that go, you know, I'm kind of curious about this, stop and looking for a job and maybe looking for a company to buy. And there, I'm going to encourage you to go, if you want to buy a biz and be a boss, and go to fastcompanybuyers.com. This is the company that is a joint venture with Bob Williford and myself. We do offer quarterly seminars that kind of walk you through the process of how to buy a company, who is qualified to do it, how do you deal with risk, how do you deal with fears, what do you really need to do to be successful in doing that. But we're also available to be buyers reps to work with you in helping first-time buyers buy companies. Sometimes it's the fastest, easiest path to finding a new living. All right, so I'm going to, I think we have one more polling question here. Is that right?
Yes. Let's see. There we go. If anyone would like more information.
We did have a question, Nancy, if people can get the slides later, and I believe those will be on the FEI website. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. All right.
This is Bob. I want to go ahead. Sorry,
We do
go
have that's okay. We do have a few that are interested in some more information. All right.
I got a story I want to tell, because when it comes to worth and the slide that John was talking about worth, I'll tell you a story about a very good friend of mine who started very young with Southwestern Bell. I think it wasn't Southwestern Bell at the time, but all of its iterations. And he finally retired after 25 years of being an executive at Southwestern Bell. And I was at a lunch with him, and I just asked him, I said, you know, you're still a relatively young guy. What do you want to do? And he looked at me really sheepishly, and he said, I want to teach high school algebra. Totally blew me away. So he goes to the school, and they make special dispensation because they can't find too many math teachers. But he's got to take courses and et cetera to get qualified. And when he comes to the school, the other teachers who are very experienced are a little bit miffed about the fact that this guy doesn't have all the proper credentials and stuff. And I don't know if you're familiar with the old television show called the Cotter class, but they give him the Cotter class. This is a class that you have to have algebra to graduate. This is a class where people have taken algebra 2 and 3 times in the entire class. Nobody has ever passed algebra. He comes in to the Cotter class, which is a bunch of cut-ups, don't care about anything, but the guy's got passion. He's not making anything near what he was worth before, but his worth is being identified with what he loves. 70% of those kids passed in that year, and he now teaches AP in that school, and he's in his 15th year of doing so. So sometimes worth is not judged just in money, it's in passion as well.
Good points, Bob.
Yeah. Thank you, Bob. All right. If we have any other questions, you can go ahead and submit it in the Q&A box, and looks like we're good.
Okay, I'm gonna interrupt one more time then and mention to you that there are a number of participants on this particular Zoom call who are not currently participating in the Dallas chapter FENG opportunities and communications. And so I'm going to urge those of you who are not to send me an email at rbobwalker.com that just says, send me the details. I will send you the details on what it takes for you to become a member of the Dallas FEI, not national FEI, just the Dallas FEI. So that allows you to be in a position where you are on the Google groups and sharing with the opportunity to be able to share job leads and to know others that you can network with within the organization. So rbobwalker@gmail.com, send me the information or send me the stuff, and I will send you the stuff about what it takes to be able to be on the synopsis. And I will tell you that the synopsis is where we find an awful lot of jobs, and there are jobs that John will tell you are not. They're the secret jobs, the hidden job market, if you will. I get lots of requests from companies and or people that say, you can't send this out as a posting. You can't send this out. Just who do you know? And that's how I use the synopsis to find candidates to be able to find jobs. If you're not on the synopsis, then you're not one of the candidates that I'm going to be able to send to possibly fulfill that job. So I'm going to urge you, if you are not receiving the emails from the local chapter, forget the national. If you're not receiving the local chapter emails from the Google groups, then you're probably not signed up on Synopsis, and you need to send. You probably need to.
Hey, Bob, that's a game changer too. I think you guys did a study at one point, and that kind of $100,000 to $200,000 job in North Texas, didn't something like 30 to 40% of those landings come through your newsletter?
That's actually Jim Ashworth did that, and yes, he said that the of the polling he was able to take, he said that the thing was among the highest percentage of people who found jobs of any of the other sources that he had listed, which is also getting close to his group, or the group at Baker Tilly is now challenging us in that regard.
So that would clearly be one of the first things you want to do in your search is to, write your paragraph to Bob and get involved in, FANG, and then also the Baker Tilly group, because they get a lot of corporate and recruiter jobs listed. Our firm puts those to Bob as well.
And when he says paragraph, there is a format that I really like to use, that if you say, send me the stuff, I will send you the stuff that includes samples of the synopsis, which helps me very much being able to drill down as to whether or not you're qualified so that I can send the resume or not.
Yeah, you see, we just got a comment from Richard that he has seen some great jobs from the synopsis, and he regrets that he didn't act on that in the past.
Now, I urge you to do so. If you're not getting the job leads right now, you're probably not on synopsis. And with that, I think, Emily, are you there to close?
I am. Cliff, would you have any closing things you'd like to add?
No, we just thank you all for coming, and John, thank you so much for giving your time and effort. We so appreciate your wisdom.
All right. Thank you, everybody. This is the end of our webcast. Just be on the lookout for your email for your CPE notification. Should be in the next 7 to 10 days. If you have any other questions, please contact Nancy Ellers at feidallas.org. And y'all have a good afternoon. Thank you.